What were your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills like at the beginning of the course? The first time I used Photoshop and InDesign were at the very beginning of the media course in September 2015, and my skills have come a long way since then. I vaguely knew how to use some of the tools in Photoshop, but had never used them properly, and I'd never even heard of InDesign. It's safe to say that I had a very limited knowledge of the programs. How far had your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills progressed by the time you had completed your preliminary exercise? They had progressed somewhat. I had learnt how to edit photos properly and use tools such as a magic wand and background eraser tool, but my prelim task was extremely basic and I'd barely used InDesign at all, so I did all of my AS media work entirely on Photoshop. What lessons did you learn about the use of technologies, both hardware and software, by the time you had completed your preliminary exercise? I'd learnt that you have to eject a memory stick properly to prevent any of your work from getting lost, which had happened to me on a few occasions. I also learnt how to properly use a DSLR camera with all the manual and auto features, as well as placement of lighting and angles of shots. I also learnt how to use other software such as the Screen Clipper tool, which allowed me to take specific cropped photos on my computer screen. How far had your Adobe Photoshop and InDesign skills progressed by the time you had completed your main task? They had progressed significantly. I was completely confident in how to use the majority of the functions, including the magnetic lasso tool, which helped me to overlap the photo of Liv on my masthead. I also learnt how to use InDesign properly with the help of online tutorials and my teacher. I had a lot of graphics to transport into my InDesign files, so I had to learn how to export the image with the background transparent to make sure it looked good. What lessons did you learn about the use of technologies, both hardware and software, by the time you had completed your main task? I learnt a lot about InDesign mainly, but I also managed to learn about Cam Studio to record my screen for question 4 of my evaluation. In terms of hardware, I was able to learn more about DSLR cameras and was able to use the photography studio to take my photos, so I got to learn even more about lighting, props and angles. What were the advantages/disadvantages of each technologies you've used? An advantage of Photoshop is that it's extremely easy to use and you can create some really nice graphics. It's also the same technology that real professionals use, so it gives you a nice feel for the real industry. However, a disadvantage of Photoshop is that it isn't very good for laying out graphics, as it doesn't use set columns. An advantage of InDesign is that unlike Photoshop, it's extremely good for layouts, as you can drag content to certain areas of the screen in order to line it up with other things. However, a disadvantage is that it's extremely difficult and complex to use, but it's also prone to crashing and not saving your work. An advantage of using a DSLR camera is that it's very easy to use and produces high quality photographs. A disadvantage, however, is you don't know quite how good your photography is going to be until you've got them a computer. They are also very heavy. An advantage of Cam Studio is that it can record your screen easily, and it's also very cheap. A disadvantage, however, is that it does crash all the time, and you sometimes have to restart your computer to fix the problem.